you'll gain something, and you will come back for more. So we'll be doing this monthly, and I was really excited for what's to come in these webinars and how we're able to, grow and learn together. So let's begin. Before I dive in, if there's anyone on the call that I haven't met, either virtually or physically, my name's Carla. I'm the founder of Rokil CIC, which stands for Raising Our Kids in Love. Here are some things that we've been up to, past and upcoming. So we do consultations, one-to-one consultations with parents and carers to meet a plethora of needs with their children or their child. We run classes and activities, one-to-one interventions, group classes. We actually do have some amazing group classes starting next Tuesday in High Wycombe. And these are for babies and toddlers ages 6 months to 4 years old. We host webinars, which you are a part of today, and that would be on a monthly basis. And you can also connect with us on our monthly blogs, which will be released at the beginning of the month. Our webinars are at the end of the month, and we will also have some community initiatives that you'll be able to engage with throughout the year. So let's dig in. So if you're here today, you may fit into one of these categories. You may be going through a stage of pregnancy, going through a stage of wanting to understand or support or learn more about baby and toddler development. Perhaps you have a baby, perhaps you have a toddler, and you're wanting to learn a bit more or be involved more with their development. You might be preparing your child for school, or you may just have a general interest about child development. And so today you'll gain essentially some understanding throughout that journey. In essence, child development is ongoing. So whatever stage you are at, or whatever brought you to this webinar today, you may actually encounter each stage. So rest assured, we will take apart, many of the topics within child development. It is very big and a very weighted topic, but I hope that you will gain a bit more insight today and kind of have a starting point to the types of topics that we will dig into a little deeper, because some of them definitely need to be unpacked a bit more, and we will be looking to do that in our monthly webinars. So what is child development? Child development refers to the physical, cognitive, emotional, and social growth that occurs throughout a child's life. We have 5 development stages: newborn, infant, toddler, preschool, and school age. So within our newborn stage of development, this stage is characterized by a rapid growth of development, reflexes, and senses. So if you have a child, or you've have your own child, or you've seen children grow, within those first 3 months, there's so much change that occurs. They go from, needing you to support their neck, to support everything, to sort of having their own reflexes, developing their senses. This is where their eyes are transitioning from going from blurry towards being able to identify colors and pictures, identifying your own face, because essentially when they come in, their sense that's the most heightened is their sense of smell, obviously their sense of touch, and we start to see how their other senses begin to engage with as they go through their development. Infant stage is quite lengthened, so we have that from 3 to 12 months, and this stage is a stage of learning to crawl, walk, communicate with sounds and gestures. At toddler, we are looking at the ages of approximately 1 to 3 years old. And this stage is exploring the environment, developing their language, their social skills, and asserting their independence. So you may see that from newborn, of course, they're completely dependent on their caregiver. By infant stage, you're starting to kind of encourage them to, kind of advocate for themselves, develop their own kind of independency. And by toddlerdom, as I call it, they're asserting their own independence. They want to put their own shoes on, they want to brush their own teeth, they want to feed themselves, and things like that, which you're starting to see. And it's setting the building blocks for preschool age, which is 3 to 5 years old. And this stage is expanding the imagination, creativity, curiosity, learning to cooperate with others, following rules. And by school age, which is 5 years and up, they are acquiring academic, physical, emotional competencies, as well as forming friendships and self-identity. Now, just drawing from 0 months to 5 years and up, we're seeing similar patterns of development and growth, but just expanded. So we're going from communicating sounds and gestures to actual language, to actual communication, being able to say, I don't like, I like, can you play with me? This is mine, things like that. And with that development of language, we're starting to see different attributes of self-identity, things that they like, that they don't like, things that they find interesting, how they navigate socially. We move from socializing with your caregiver and your immediate family, which can be quite easy for some children, a bit easier because you spend more time within those settings, to now trying to build those social skills with other children, with other care providers, essentially, if they're going to nursery or they have childminding, and asserting their independency rather, through that. So we have 5 identified areas of development, thereabout. Some go up to about 7 or go down to 4. I will explain why and how. But I like to kind of round it off to 5 areas of development. And today we're going to look at how these correspond with the stages. So the stage of development, like we discussed, from our newborn up until school age. And now we're going to look at how these areas of development correspond with these stages. We have physical development, cognitive development, communication development, social and emotional development. Physical development, which includes gross and motor skills, gross motor and fine motor skills rather. Gross motor skills are your big motor skills. So think of it as gross, big, and fine as small. So how am I using my body in a big way? I'm running, I'm jumping, I'm clapping. How am I using my body in a fine way, in a small way? It's eating, picking of things, being able to do those writing skills and things like that. Cognitive development, such as counting, identifying shapes, problem solving, activities such as popping shapes into boxes that have the cutouts and thinking, okay, this circle does not fit into this. This circle fits into the circle. It can't fit into the star. It looks different. It's not going through. And those types of activities, we find that the children go from the satisfaction of just popping them in to then understanding that the shape of a circle and the shape of a star are actually different. And that's why I like to tell parents that don't feel too rushed or feel too pressured to exchange and change toys, especially those that are created to build those cognitive skills, because they are definitely multi-purpose, and we can look at that a bit later. Communication development, such as talking, listening, understanding. We break up communication into two ways. We can look at it as receptive and expressive. And I like to break that down because sometimes children may be great with the expressive front of communication, i.e. being able to say or express or demonstrate what they want, what they don't want, and may find it a bit more difficult to receive communication, which is your receptive. So understanding instruction or understanding what they've been told in a social setting, whether it be verbal or non-verbal. And so yes, this includes their speech and language skills as a whole. And then we have our social and emotional development, which includes interpersonal skills such as playing with others, expressing their emotions, and forming those relationships. So how does that look like in each stage? So within our newborn phase, like we discussed, there's a rapid growth and development of reflexes and senses. So between newborn and infant, we would see physical development in the ability to maneuver their own neck, having that neck strength, reaching out to you when they want you to carry them, turning their neck from left to right if you're doing certain activities or making certain sounds. And that develops into crawling, walking, running, jumping, hopping, spinning around, and being able to do that with good balance, which is something to take note of. With our cognitive development, where we are looking at identifying shapes, counting, things like that, problem solving. Of course, from toddler to school age, cognitive development can be somewhat easily identified with certain activities. Like I said, the shape sorting activities, counting, looking at certain shapes, colors, and things like that. At younger age, you will see problem solving skills in terms of their understanding when something is hidden. So for example, if you've taken something and you've removed it, how your child responds to it disappearing almost. So, you can play peekaboo, hiding things behind the back. And as children develop, you actually would see that they now understand, permanent. So they know that it's actually not gone, it's just behind you, or it's just underneath the scarf. This is a very important development milestone because especially with children, when you're now starting to transition from toddler to preschool to school age, when they may be spending a lot more time away from you as the caregiver, they need to understand that mummy, daddy, grandma are not gone forever, but they are away for a certain period of time and they will be back. And now for your communication development, such as talking, listening, and understanding, that you see throughout. You actually see that even during pregnancy, when your child may respond to your voice, certain sounds and things like that. And so once you get into your newborn phase and your infant phase, the identifying of your voice, identifying of your tone as well, when you're trying to develop instructions and adhering to boundaries with infants, they start to kind of understand that that's receptive communication. And so what we see is from newborn phases with speech and language, it starts off with babbling, repeating certain phrases that you may say, and identifying certain sounds to do with certain things. So for example, if they hear the ding of the microwave or the turning on of the stove, as associating that with certain things and maybe mirroring those. And as you get to your infant stages, turning those baba, dada into, words like all or dada, mama, and associating those babblings and starting to make more sense of those babblings. And as you go into preschool and school age, that's now developing stringing along sentences and being able to form those correctly. We'll talk a bit more about communication a bit later when we want to start to see a transition from the mirroring and copying into more independent initiations of speech and language and the importance of that, and when we now need to start to develop independency with communication, because we do see as a newborn, it's very much copying and following along with what you do. So you will mirror with your mouth, ba, ba, or for them to copy. And what we want to see eventually is that they're not mirroring or copying exactly what you say each time. And that would be referred to as echolalia, but we will go into that a bit later. And for your social and emotional development, like I said earlier, we could see these as 4 strands of development, 5 strands if we separate social and emotional. Sometimes we combine the 2 because they're very interrelated. And so with the social and emotional, they are essentially within the umbrella of interpersonal skills. So being able to play with other people, other children, interacting with different adults compared to your own primary care giver, expressing your emotions, how you express your emotions, when you express your emotions, and forming those relationships, which we see becomes more important between this preschool and school age, because they're spending less time at home if they aren't homeschooled and spending more time around other children and other adults, and the importance of them being able to build those relationships to feel safe and thrive in those settings other than just at home. But rest assured, we will look deeper into how we can also facilitate that for our young ones. So child development refers to the physical, cognitive, emotional, and social growth that occurs throughout a child's life. What does that tell us? That tells us that it's ongoing. So if you're here and you are just trying to now take hold of your child's development yourself, maybe you want to homeschool, maybe you want to be a bit more hands-on within their education, or you just want to see how you can weave in and out your own interventions throughout your child's week or day. You don't feel disheartened if you didn't start this at newborn stage. Don't feel disheartened if your child's already at school and you're thinking, oh wow, should they already have these certain interpersonal skills, or should they already have this level of physical development? It's an ongoing thing and it happens throughout your child's life. So there's always moments where you can step in and begin to intervene and begin to support and make healthy changes if they're needed. Your child's mental health, their cognitive health, their behavioral, their social well-being, which all impacts mental health, is affected by this development. So their physical, emotional, social, it is impacted greatly by their cognitive, behavioral, and social well-being. And you'll find that they interconnect, which means sometimes, or most of the time, you'll be addressing more than one development area at a time because they naturally relate with one another. So let's take an example. So if you're trying to develop your child's communication development, increase their speech and their language, you may see that their social and emotional development also needs to come into play for them to be able to communicate that. For example, if they're playing with a child and the child takes a toy away from them and they begin to cry, or they hit the child, or they drop on the floor, or they no longer want to play with the child, we're now looking at, we're now looking at their ability to share and collaborate with others. The important thing that they need in that moment is language. They need to be able to communicate effectively that I don't like this, or you're within my space bubble, or I was playing with that first and you can have it within a minute. So you see that within that scenario, so to speak, they're now engaging with different development stages at a time. And some children may find some areas a bit more difficult than others. Okay, let's look at some common childhood concerns. I've taken these from a few of the umbrellas of development that we spoke about today. So emotional, social, behavioral, and communication. Anxiety, which I've placed under the umbrella of an emotional, concern of a child. Anxiety, its definition, can be defined as a fear or worry about something that is anticipated, whether it's likely to happen or not. So you will have a fear or a worry about something. And with children, it's common that we will see examples of anxiety when it comes to separation, when it comes to things like bedtime, which can also be seen as separation, and when it comes to routine. I say to many parents when it comes to separation anxiety, it's very natural and it's also an indication of a healthy attachment style, which is something we will discuss another day. But it essentially shows that your child has a healthy relationship with yourself, their primary caregivers. And so when they're away from them, they're likely to feel afraid, likely to have a fear or a worry about something. How can we address this childhood concern? So, practice being away from your little one whilst at home. A big change is dropping them off at nursery or dropping them off at a caregiver, dropping them off at grandma's or aunties or uncles for play dates if they're staying at that at their friend's house for the time being, especially if they've not had a lot of opportunity to practice and learn being away from you. You can practice this at home by just simply leaving the room. It's your voice that soothes them. So that's taking you back to our communication development when they were newborn and in your tummy, or if you're not a parent, when children are in the womb, they actually start to develop recognition of their parents' voices, caregivers, those that are around them, certain songs, certain music. It brings them joy, peace, and comfort. So we can actually draw back to the basics. Your voice alone still has that power to soothe your child. So practice being away from them whilst at home. They can be in their play area, in the living room, in bedroom, wherever they, or even in the garden, wherever they play, and you can go to the kitchen. You let them know, wow, you're playing so nicely. I'm going to go to the kitchen. You go to the kitchen. Whilst you're in the kitchen, well done, you're playing very nicely. Mummy, daddy, grandma, I'm just in the kitchen cooking, or I'm just in the, well, cooking whatever you're cooking, or I'm just in the kitchen tidying up. I'll be with you very soon. You go back in. You wait for a minute. Maybe if they're speaking or engaging in speech and language at that age, they'll be able to tell you what they're doing or what they're working on, and you can engage with them. That's very nice. I like how you're playing with that. I'm going to go back to the kitchen. And you're just working on that level of independency to know that you don't have to physically be with them all the time for them to feel safe or for them to have a great time playing. And your voice comforts them. It lets them know that you may leave, but you will be back. And it's encouraging that independence and their ability for imaginary play and just understanding the world around them really, and how they can problem solve and use their toys for different means. So their teddy bear can be their stuffy, their lovely, it can be a baby, it can be the sick baby, they can be the doctor, it can be the student, and you start to give them room to play independently, use their imagination to repurpose their toys on their own. Because many times it can be difficult when you give them your own ideas, but when it comes from them, not only are they feeling more autonomous and feeling, a beam of pride that they've come up with this new idea for themselves, but they're likely to engage with it longer. Let's look at bedtime and anxieties that happen at bedtime. So this one can also be seen as separation. I would say with bedtimes, it's great to have a routine if your child is struggling with bedtimes, and it would of course depend on age as well. So incorporating a few activities surrounding bedtime to make it very special and unique to your family. Everyone's nighttime routine looks different, and so when you're trying to come up with a routine for them, it's good for you to also bear that in mind. You do not need to do what anyone else does online or what you see, what naturally happens within your home. One, it's easier on you, and it makes it more consistent for yourself. It's something that you'll be able to keep up. And one thing that you don't want is switching up in changes with routine, which is what we're going to move on to next. So you can incorporate a few activities surrounding bedtime. So this can include bath, a story, prayer, brushing your teeth, singing a lullaby, something along that nature. Keep it simple so that they can digest it and so that it can be consistent. And then you want them to start anticipating what each part of their routine will be and what to expect. And once you have that, you can start signposting them back to what they should be doing, and it reduces the need for telling off or reiterating or giving other instructions, because the last thing both of you need, or all of you need if you have multiple children at bedtime, is overly speaking, overly communicating. It can be frustrating, it can be too much information to take in, and speech and language is a form of stimulation, if you wasn't aware. Stimulation isn't only physical when they're moving or if they're eating something that can stimulate them, give them energy. Receiving information, so that's their receptive communication, and that's instructions, whether it was a story or you're telling them something, can be stimulating also. So you want to keep it simple and you want to keep it consistent. Depending on their age, you can do this as an activity. It can be really nice. You can have some pictures of certain things, whether it's the bath, the story, a prayer, brush your teeth, or if your bedtime, you eat dinner a bit later and closer to bedtime, you can put dinner, bath, and you can have those there and they can color it in. If they're writing already, they can help you write it. And it's something that they do with you. And I feel like it's a great activity you can do together and just kind of sets them up for routines and structure. Now let's move on to routine when it comes to anxiety. Switching up in routine, such as, you know, like the usual shopping market that you might go to, the grocery store, changing of schools, changing of things such as pajamas, or an activity that they might do on a weekend, is actually quite unsettling, and it's very big for your little one. For us, obviously, as we're much older, we're used to chopping and changing, having that adaptable skill and being able to, you know, throw on different clothing or go to a different supermarket as it suits us. But for a little child who is just in their own little world, every change can be very impactful and very big, especially if they're involved with it. At Rokil, I find that social stories are a great way to communicate to your child big changes. And a social story essentially is just a short story that you have written for your child specifically. And their name can be in it, or you can even use other stories that are related to the change that's happening. For example, we're having a baby is a great story. I like to create my own stories for the children because it's great for them to see and also see the real life changes. So for example, if they're changing school, I would actually have an image of the new school, the uniform, maybe a few images of what the school looks like and things like that. And it's something that you can start reading in the summer before they're going to start school, just so that they're prepared and they feel included as well. I think many times we don't include children when it comes to just the runnings of their routine or just life in general, and then they get to a certain age where all that independency, all that autonomy, all those expectations to be involved just get thrown at them, and it can be quite unsettling or a bit anxiety inducing even to just kind of transition into, okay, wow, now I'm a part of the decision making. So there's little ways that you can include them in these decisions. Even as young as if your child isn't speaking, walking, talking, something that I used to do with my son is place two things in front of him and let him choose, whether it was the t-shirt or whether it was the story or whether it was the stuffed animal that I wanted him to play with. And I found that it really developed his voice, and not voice, so to speak, to say physically, but his voice in terms of how he expresses himself, to communicate what he wants, what he likes, and just involving him in everything. And I did find that it was a great stepping stone for when I wanted to introduce language, because he was already being involved with the routine and things that was going on. And I would just like to add as well, when it comes to things like pajamas, and little changes, because I did touch on big changes like school or having a baby, changing the supermarket. And I would say that changing the supermarket might not be too extreme for neurotypical children. But children who are neurodiverse, having a specific supermarket or a specific place that they go to, it can be quite unsettling for them. So social stories are really great. And for little things like pajamas, if it's their favorite pajama and they're now starting to, outgrow it, it's great to kind of have those discussions about when things, why things change, and embracing new things. And something as small as changing a pajama and getting them to understand that now it's time for big girl pajamas or big boy pajamas, allows a smooth transition into having other discussions about change as well and how they receive that. So let's swiftly move on to social, the umbrella of social. And we can also see anxiety within that as a childhood concern, and just overall playing with others. Ways that you can support your child's engagement with other children is having small group activities. I find that they're best for children who find social settings like quite challenging, because you can work on building those social skills on a one-to-one or a small group level, and then this can be transferred to larger group settings. And it just ensures that your child feels equipped to navigate those environments. So if your child's used to going to like swim classes or play groups and things like that, when they're now going to school where it's more children, they're getting less attention, you're less likely to see things where they're opting for attention, doing behaviors that might not be too great to get attention, or finding it difficult to share. This will particularly come into play with children who may be an only child, and they have all their toys and all the resources at their disposal. And once they go into settings like school or daycare or nursery or playgroups where they now have to share these things, it can be quite difficult for them to understand. And so I do recommend small group activities. Secondly, it's great for you to look at time, space, and communication. These three things, time, space, and communication, when trying to support your child's social skills. With time, you're thinking about the amount of exposure they're having to noise, interaction, or stimulation. So you might want to think about whipping them in and out if they're struggling to be in a like a party or a birthday party or a family function, or if you have a large family. You want to think about the exposure that they have to the noise, the interaction, people hugging them, kissing them, playing with them, and whipping them in and out, just to kind of support that regulation. Communication. You want to communicate before going anywhere. Language is such a great thing because you don't have to overthink it. You don't have to think, oh, let me sit them down and have this long-winded conversation. Just naturally, as you're including them in your routine, you're going to include them within what's happening throughout the day. So you'll be like, we're going to see grandma. It's going to be really nice. You get to play. You get to this. We're having food. We're having lunch. If they're a bit older, you want to just explore that two-way conversation with them as well. So like, do you like cake? And we will have cake, and there'll be this and that. And for children who are at a later development stage and they're speaking or being able to communicate, or you're seeing certain behaviors that they struggle with social settings, you can begin to give them certain time boundaries. So we'll be there for an hour, we'll be there for half an hour or 20 minutes. Granted, it's a bit difficult for parents when you have to adapt to things like that, but you see in the long run that you can expand that threshold. So if you've gone to a party with them, birthday parties, and they struggle with birthday parties, start off with, and it's an hour birthday party, start off with 20 minutes, then start to begin to expand it. and give them time to thrive and do good in those settings. I find that when children feel that they've done something great, it makes them want to do it more. And we don't want to set them up to fail. So you wouldn't want to put too much pressure on them. And with space, lastly, with space, understanding space. I love to teach children about space bubble. And I even teach my own son about space bubble for myself. And a space bubble essentially is literally just a bubble, and everyone's bubble is different. Some people need more space, some people need less space. And whilst we want to teach children that, you know, they it's great for them to be able to tolerate others in their space, because, you know, with young children, they cross each other, they hop on each other, they might use each other as a stepping stool to literally grab something up. But it's also important that they understand space, and they understand when they need to give space and when they need to request space. And this is just building those communication skills as well, especially when it comes to advocating for themselves, ensuring that they're safe, and ensuring that they'll be able to communicate with you if they weren't comfortable with someone in their space. Right. Now, we're going to go on to behavioral, and we're just looking at tantrums, large displays of emotion, whether that be meltdowns, hitting, throwing themselves on the floor, screaming. I do find that language and communication plays a big role before, during, and after any big outburst. So focusing on getting yourself to communicate likes and dislikes, and now giving them the opportunity to do the same. So telling them what you don't like, and it's a great you're mirroring that behavior and mirroring that communication for them to be able to do that as well. And for some children, it's great for you to give them that language. So if they do show a large emotion, whether it's covering their ears or they scream or they yell, you can gently let them know, like, oh, you didn't like that, or it's too loud, or I wasn't finished, or can I have some more? For children that are younger, so we're looking at our infant ages, you can start to introduce sign language as a way to communicate those things. So we have more, we have all done, and those were the two ways of communicating that I actually introduced personally. And I found that, one, it was a great stepping stone to introduce verbal language, and it limited the outbursts when my son wanted more, or when he was all done, which you would see when it's like time to eat and they don't want any more and things like that. Or if they want to play more with something, and it supports them to be able to do that. You want to transition from crying for things when they're very small. So at that newborn stage, crying is a very natural reaction to wanting something. So that's their only way of communicating if they're hungry, hot, cold. And essentially, as a newborn parent, you have to go through the list of what it could be. Are they wet? Are they cold? Are they hungry? And you just have to go through it. But it gets easier as you go along, and you can start to identify what it may be, depending on the time of day, depending on your routine. Or, like I said, once they're starting to be able to mirror those non-verbal cues, or even say those things, you start to identify what these things are. A second way that you can start to address behavioral concerns is to identify the triggers. It's great to be proactive when it comes to your child's behavior, understanding what exactly was occurring during the time. So is it at a specific time, like bedtime? Is it at within a specific activity, like dinner? Is it at nighttime? Is it at noon? And you're trying to now gauge, what can I offer to support? Do I need to start having a visual timetable because it's difficult at bedtimes, or they're struggling to transition throughout their routine? Do I need to start thinking about sensory toys, because at bedtime it might be easier if they have something to hold on to, or a weighted blanket? Do I need to think about extra comforts like a teether, or a toy to bring with me if I'm taking like a bus journey, or it's a long journey, or we're waiting at the doctor's surgery, or things like that? And then you want to start looking at reinforcers. So if that's through language, if that's through physical reinforcers, whether it's they have a chart where they can have like a sticker chart, whether it's through verbal, giving them well done, if it's through it reinforces for negative behavior as well. So if it's counting down, a stern look, using your facial expressions, using your tone. And lastly, we're looking at the umbrella of communication, and we're tackling speech and language. Such a big one, and varies for different stages. Some children skip certain speech and language cues or goals during our development stages, and some children are still finding it difficult as they navigate through those. So we can look at things such as speech and language delay, echolalia, which is repeating words and phrases. For example, it could be something that your child likes and they consistently say that word, and they consistently say that word in a certain environment or a certain scenario, which is telling of whether they're feeling anxious or upset. Or it could be something that they like, if it's like zoom or boom, and they really enjoy that and they consistently repeat those phrases. Or it could be when you ask your child a question and they repeat the question instead of answering the question. And overall limited language. When I speak to my service users about how they can introduce language effectively, I like to refer them to the 5 senses. So what you can see, what you can hear, what you can touch, what you can smell and taste. When you're introducing language, you want to make it as interactive as possible. One, because it actually makes us remember more, and you're involving all the child senses, which in essence, language is formed from. Because what can I see? You can express what you can see. What can I hear? You can express what you hear. What can I touch? What can I feel? What can I smell? What can I taste? An example of this would be if your child is playing with a block, for example, and they're touching the block, of course, so we're engaging with their touch, their physical development, and you're asking them a question, what are you doing? For yourself, you can answer for them, are you rocking the block? Rocking the block, rock the block, rock block. As you've seen, I've taken a large sentence and I'm now bringing it down to something that's digestible. Rock, block, rock, block. We're using tones to now make it a bit more playful, almost sounding like a song. And we know that songs, music is very memorable. Rock, block is a rhyming word as well. So we're playing around with language, we're introducing things that are rhyming, introducing things that are memorable. Rock, block, and now we're expanding that. It's a red block, a r, e, d phonics, red block. You want to start to introduce different characteristics of this block to your child so that you're engaging with them even more. Doing certain things like that expands their time frame in that certain activity as well, because it's not just about pushing the block or building the blocks. But again, if they're at that age where they are building the blocks, then you can start talking about up and down, and you can do certain things like that. But if they're just beginning to find interest in these things, these are ways that you can support. What can you hear? So if they're banging the block, bang, bang, crash. These are onomatopoeic words, which means these are words that actually sound like the thing. So crash sounds like crash, and they're words that you can support them throughout an activity. So bang, crash, boom. And it's nice for them to be able to be actively involved with the activity. You're engaging language, you're engaging them with their physical development and promoting them to be able to be imaginative with their play, because that block could be a train, that block can be a tower or a car. It's whatever they want it to be, and it's nice to not reduce certain items to just one thing. And of course, when it comes to certain items, if they're doing like sensory play, what can you feel? Is it hard? Is it soft? And if you're doing anything to do with like food, which I would limit it to food, because if you're looking at smells and tastes, you don't want it to be a thing where they're tasting sand, which will not be too great. But essentially, if they do taste sand, use that as an opportunity. Yucky, ugh, what is that? It tastes yucky, and things like that. So you can use all opportunities to introduce language and getting them to talk about what they're doing and why they're doing it and how they're receiving that language as well. And just to touch on question and answers, this is where we can reduce echolalia, where I ask, what are you doing? And they say, what are you doing? Sometimes it's good if you can give them the answer. And just as I did, you start to break it down into a digestible phrase. So what are you doing? Are you rocking the block? Rocking the block, rock, block. And you find with time, your child would likely draw from I'm rocking the block, or rocking the block, or rock, block, or just block, or just rock. And all are absolutely fine and absolutely amazing. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I think I'm still good for time. Does anyone have any questions? If you have any questions, you can place them in the chat. You can also raise your hand if you'd like to speak. And I believe I just saw a question pop up.
Okay, I have found the question.
Okay, great.
The question reads, in terms of speech and language, my 2-year-old niece has regressed in speech. Is it normal to forget words? What can I do to help?
Thank you for your question. So regression in speech is, it could be a sign of a few things. So you'd want to understand, what exactly is she regressing in speech? Was it that she was saying many words and now she's not saying those same words that she was saying before? Is it that she was saying sentences and we're now breaking the sentences down? What you'd want to do is try to encourage her to get back to the stage that she was at. So if she was saying certain words, encourage her to say those words, especially if it's towards, achieving a certain task or trying to get something. If she wants the ball, or she wants more cake, if you're saying more, so if it's that it's a regression, you don't want to put too many words in for her to achieve what she wants. So you can say more, and once she's signed more or she said more, you can give her what it is, and you just let her know that it's more cake. Or if it's a sentence, for example, I want to go out, and you can ask these questions. So this is where your questions and answers really support them. If you can see that she's trying to achieve something, for example, she's stretching up, or she's pulling at something, or she's trying to in the direction of something, give that language. So I want more, or I want to go out, or I'm finished, and try to see how far you can push her to repeat that phrase. I hope I've answered the question. Okay, I'm seeing a few more questions.
There's one, how important is it for parents to seek support, either through professional help or community resources, when dealing with challenging behavior?
Thank you for the question. I think it's extremely important. No man is an island, is what I love to say. And it actually takes a village to raise a child, much less if you have other children. And even more so if you have one child in a particular, when you have multiple children that has some difficulties, within what development stage they're at or within whatever area. I would say definitely seeking professional support if you have any concerns. Asking a question is not a commitment to anything. And at Rokil, we actually offer our first consultation for free. And that's just to support parents, carers, educators who have maybe some pressing questions and maybe they just need a direct answer or something that's specifically tailored to them, as opposed to going on to Google and finding a plethora of different answers or scenarios which might not be fitting for you or your child. And that just leads me to say that it's really important that you find something that is very individualized, because every child is different, whether they're given the same diagnosis, whether they're at the same age, whether they are finding the same thing difficult. They're very different. And there's many other factors that are associated with them. So I would definitely encourage families and parents to seek professional help. Community resources that are out there, things like this that you're on, our blogs, DMing us, emailing us when it comes to challenging behavior is great. Thank you so much. What's the best way to help a non-verbal child communicate? So I think when it comes to non-verbal children, your first your first frame of mind you need to first recognize what communication is and how they will effectively communicate, and not what you expect communication to be or what general communication is seen like, because we are now in a space where communication can be explored in many different ways. We have devices and tools that children can use to communicate. We have sign language, Makaton. There's so many different ways that children communicate, and as well as verbal. And so it's best that you figure out, how can my child feel the most autonomous, feel the most rewarded, and the most confident when they're communicating? Is it through sign language? Can I collaborate signs with words to support them? Do I need to start looking at assistive devices that can help them? Are they good with technology? If technology is something that you don't want to go into and you'd like something a bit more naturalistic, then you have to now think about, okay, what kind of interventions are out there that are naturalistic? Can I do these on my own? Will I now need to seek professional support? And that will be your first starting point. So your first starting point is really identifying what exactly do I feel is the best way that my child can communicate now, and then now who do I need to speak to and what do I need to do to make sure that they're communicating effectively, and not just when it comes to verbal, but it's about communicating. And with non-verbal children, there is a fallout of social and emotional and physical development and behavior, and a lot of it is weighted on communication. And then we find that if they're not communicating effectively, they may lash out, or they may have some emotional challenges because they don't feel understood. So your first point of reference is, how can my child feel best understood? And you take it from there. And once they're communicating effectively and communicating in a way that makes them feel understood, you can start thinking, okay, if this isn't verbally, how can I slowly but progressively start to introduce language to them to help support them verbally? I hope I answered the question. Thank you so much for your questions. If you have any more questions, my DMs, the emails are constantly open and available for you guys to send those over. If you're interested in one-to-one consultation, or you would like to speak to anyone about your child, you can email us at info@rokilcic.com. Check out our website so that you can see what activities and resources and things that you can connect with and engage with throughout the month. And also follow us on our social media so that you can see what's going on, what we have available to you and your children. Yes. Thank you, guys. I hope to see you in the next webinar. That will be on July 29th, and the topic and guest speaker will be revealed. So you need to sign up to our mailing list. Make sure you're following us on our socials so that you can stay updated. And yes, thank you so much. See you in the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.